Vancouver Canucks president of hockey operations, Jim Rutherford, had himself an interview earlier today, and we're going to be going over some of the quotes, some of the ideas that he highlights over here. Believe me, I was going to go out there and make a video talking about my gripes with guys like Alex Chiasson and Tanner Pearson and just some of the guys on the team that I kind of haven't really had the nicest things to say. I was going to go out there and say even more not nice things about them, but President Jim Rutherford came out here and had himself the talk instead, which gives me a little bit more of a grace period before I absolutely go off on Tanner Pearson. So, before we go over some of the quotes, because there were a lot of quotes, I wanted to highlight just one tweet here from Taj that kind of summarizes the entire Rutherford interview today. There are three key takeaways that he highlights that I do think are indeed important, and we will get into the specific quotes after we read this tweet. Three takeaways from Rutherford's interview. Firstly, he thinks the bottom six is trash. Hey, guess what? I think he's kind of right. Not to absolutely crap all over Tyler Mott, because I do think that he's one of the better guys in the bottom six, and not to absolutely take the piss out of Matthew Highmore, because the guy came back after missing 20-something games and had two really good scoring opportunities yesterday. He just didn't bury it. But other guys on this team, Justin Dowling doesn't really move the needle all too much. Juho Lammikko is the de facto fifth-line center playing fourth line because Brandon Sutter isn't here. We don't have guys like Roussel and Beagle and Eriksson anymore, but we still do have a bottom six that needs a little bit more work, a little bit more pizzazz, etc. So for Rutherford going out there talking about them, very specifically, I like that. Not getting fooled by the winning streak. He knows they have big holes. You know, I like that too. Never, never, never get too high up on your horse over there. Always try to stay humble and acknowledge where your problems lie on your team, even if you're going out there winning 7 straight hockey games. He also does not seem to be too high on Elias Pettersson right now. We'll get into that as this video goes on. Now, before we expand on those ideas, we have another quote from Jim Rutherford that I wanted to highlight here first. He says that the GM that he hires will probably be an entry-level GM, someone who has worked hard to deserve an opportunity. Now, whether or not that means it's somebody like a Jennifer Botterill who has not had a GM position before, or a Chris McFarland who has not had a GM position before, he's been an assistant GM, not a regular GM, it means that we're going to avoid Jason Botterill in Seattle or any of the other guys that have been here before. So no Mark Bergevin likely, no, I don't know, name all the other guys who got fired recently. None of those guys. Gonna be somebody brand new. And I know it's easy to go out there and say, oh, Jim Benning was a brand new entry-level GM on the Vancouver Canucks when they hired him back in 2014 or whatever it was. And I'm just going to go out there and say it, man. I think that some of the candidates that the Vancouver Canucks have been linked to, like McFarland, like Jennifer Botterill, etc., I really like the approach that they have when it comes to reading the game of hockey and talking about it and seeing what's valuable and whatnot, because it's very clear, based off what we have seen built with the Colorado Avalanche with McFarland, as well as Jennifer Botterill and her views on television, it's very clear that these people don't see the game the same way that Jim Benning appears to see the game. So yeah, I don't think that Benning argument, oh, Benning was a new GM, so hiring anybody else who's going to be a new GM too is very doomed to fail. I don't think that's a good argument in the slightest, but you can disagree. You can go out there in the comments and let me know what you think about that. But either way, somebody brand new is going to be here, so sorry Mark Bergevin, he's not stepping into this spot anytime soon. Next up, let's go over the quotes as to what Rutherford says about building this team forward. I'll say the obvious. We need to get better in certain places to be a consistent playoff team and contender. Because of that, if we make trades, it will be for draft picks and younger players so we can bring this team together. Here's a quote from Reddit. It's a summary of what Rutherford also said. He said, sometimes you have to let go of players that are here short-term to make upgrades elsewhere in the lineup. Now, this is something combined with the previous thing that we talked about that had a lot of people go out there and start thinking about other players on the team that could be trade candidates. One in particular was JT Miller, because if you want to talk about guys who are really valuable, really strong hockey players who are here for the short term, Miller expires next year. Who knows if trading somebody with value for draft picks and prospects would be the move for Rutherford and his approach to building this team in the future. And we've already discussed the entire angle of trading JT Miller already on this channel, but you can go ahead and watch that video if you hadn't seen it already. Miller is probably one of the strongest candidates when it comes to this description. If you want to go out there and say that this description is going to be fulfilled and somebody will be traded for sure, It's just something to think about right now. When it comes to the other parts of this team, though, and the way the Vancouver Canucks are being assembled, I like how Rutherford says that it's going to be younger players, it's going to be draft picks because we want to build this team for the future, and it's very nice getting that clarity from Rutherford that yes, this team is not a contender right now. We are going to try to contend soon, just not now. And so maybe a few more trades for picks and prospects and all that will be the move to allow us to do that. So, and I very much do like that he's being so clear about it, because betting, dude, flashbacks to him just going around in circles and saying something one week and saying the complete opposite the next week. Oh, we live day to day. Ooh, we didn't have time to sign Tyler Toffoli. Oh, we did this, we did that. All this crap about Jim Benning, dude, it's just so refreshing to have another face behind there saying things that we need to hear. Here's what he says about the bottom six. One thing I will point out is that we need to get more out of them. They've got to chip in offensively a bit more if we are going to move up in the standings and take a run at the playoffs. And yeah, I mean, you talk about Mott, you talk about Lamico, you talk about Highmore, Chason, Dowling, and like Dickinson or whatever. I mean, I don't know about you, but I would have liked having a Gadjevich on this team instead. I would have liked having a Zach McEwen instead, not just because they can fight, but because they have elements to their games that a lot of these guys just don't really have. Chason is the most useless player out there, and it's crazy to me how much opportunity he gets just because he's a right-handed shot. Jason Dickinson, while he has looked a little bit better under Boudreau, I do think there's a lot more to give there. Then you have yourselves, of course, Lamico, who is a replacement-level center, Dowling, who is in and out of the lineup, Highmore, who is just back, and Mott, who is consistently pretty okay. We do need more out of the bottom six. And it's kind of funny because when I think about what a good bottom six looks like, I don't really think about any other team in the NHL. I think about the Canucks in the Tortorella year when we had ourselves, what was it, like Brad Richardson, Sean Mathias, and Mike Santorelli, a few of these guys suiting up in the bottom six, actually doing the brunt of all the work instead of the Sedins and Burrows. That was a really interesting time period for the Vancouver Canucks. But if our bottom six can become effective like those guys were in the past, then I think Jim Rutherford is onto something here. Next up, our final quote of the day. Let's look at what Rutherford says about Elias Pettersson. I think overall, he's not the player he was a few years ago right now. He's taken strides in the right direction compared to the first 20 games. We know it's there. He's done it before. We've got to keep working at it. Now, how refreshing is it to have somebody go out there in the organization and call out EP40 word for word, say, yeah, he's not the player he was. He is worse now. He didn't say that specifically verbatim, but you know what he means, right? Pettersson, oh boy, Pettersson. Yesterday, I said this in the video, but like, yesterday's game against LA, this game needed Pettersson, and Pettersson needed this game. It just absolutely did not go down in the way that Pettersson or anybody watching Pettersson would have wanted it to, because he missed a few really good opportunities, he fumbled it in the shootout, he had a really rough game, even though he had an assist, even though he's been going out there scoring points and actually producing under Boudreau. It's very clear to see that EP40 from 2-3 years ago is not the EP40 we have right now. And so, for that quote to come out here from the president of hockey operations, like, yeah, he's not the player he was, that's clear. Like, I respect the fact that he went out there and said it straight up. Now, what does this mean for Elias Pettersson? It just means they got to go out there and keep working on it. It doesn't mean he's going to get traded or anything. Everybody's talking about a trade on Twitter, which is kind of wild. Absolutely bananas over here. I cannot believe anybody's even considering that idea. But, you know, if there's a trade going down, let's say somebody offers up a Connor McDavid or whatever, I'd be okay with that. It's just, you know, it's very, very difficult to even think of an Elias Pettersson trade that would be realistic enough to happen while also serving the Canucks a tremendous amount of value. It's just likely never going to happen ever, so just try to go out there and work with the asset that you have. A guy who is going out there a little bit better now than he had been before in the Travis Green, but who still is definitely not there, and who still hasn't had his awakening yet, you know? Like, Brock Besser, immediately after Boudreau came in, scored a few goals. He had that multi-goal game against San Jose. He has been bananas, and we really, really miss him. Pettersson hasn't had that awakening yet, so it's up to him, it's up to Bruce, it's up to everybody in that locker room to help the best player on the team, the supposed to be best player on the team, get back to that status. But aside from that, you know, that wraps up our video here on Rutherford. Talk to me in the comments all your thoughts about what he had to say on the media. I hope you enjoyed this video, Rolls 99, and bye.